RL2 Determining Themes is very similar to RI2 Determining Claims, except this time we are working with fictional texts. Unlike RL2 Determining Claims, where we're really talking about finding the main message in people talking to you and speeches that you might encounter in life, determining themes really applies more to media. We are very much a media-driven culture. We really like our television shows and the movies that we watch, and while many of them don't really have any underlying messages that we need to think hard about, some of them do, and if we aren't aware that they're messages that are being conveyed to us, we can perhaps be taken unawares and start to believe things that we wouldn't normally believe. So it's worthwhile to understand how themes work and how we can pull them from text so we can be an educated consumer audience. This target, again, looks a whole lot like RI2 Determining Claim. At the one level, you can simply determine multiple themes. They need to be accurate, and you'll need to tell me at least two, but you don't need to give any supporting detail here, so pretty easy peasy. Moving up, though, you'll need to start giving some proof for your themes. You'll need to give me at least 1 to 2 details per theme, so that'll really end up being 2 to 4 total for a 2 level. And you also need to explain how they relate. You gotta make sure to do that. How do they connect to one another? At a 3 level, you can give at least 3 supporting details per theme, so you're going to have at least 6 total. And then, of course, you'll also want to make sure that it shows development throughout the entire text. And then at the 4 level, not only do they need to be 3, but there need to be key details, the details that are most important in the text. And we'll talk about what that might mean. So first questions first, how do we find themes? You need to be able to find at least 2 of them per text that you look at. Remember, a theme is an underlying message or lesson of a fictional text. So there are a couple different ways you can go about trying to figure out what that message or lesson might be. You can always consider what the main character or characters learned. That can be key. Perhaps we are supposed to learn the same message. Sometimes, though, it might be an opposite. So you can consider what we, the audience, can learn from the main character's example. If, for instance, they don't end their story in a very positive light, we might take a different route and say, well, hey, we don't want to follow the same path as them. Our lesson is to do differently. You can also watch for repeated symbols or things that seem to have some significance outside of themselves. Bridges are a very common symbol. Weather can be a common symbol. Anything that you see repeated could indicate that there's something important about it, and that might relate to the theme. For instance, if you see a story with a lot of bridges, and perhaps the main character is experiencing change in life, the theme might relate to bridging time or bridging experiences and learning new things. You also want to make sure that the themes that you choose connect to universal human experiences. Themes are big picture. They should be things that all of us will at some point experience in our life. Think of love, hate, any of the emotions, really. Think of the universal experience of war, which unfortunately we'll all probably live through at some point or another. Think of the smaller things that occur in life on a daily basis, really. Deception, for instance. These things are the makings of themes, not themes themselves, topics, but they can turn into themes, and we'll talk about that next. Once you've decided on what you believe the theme is, do verify that the majority of the text supports your chosen theme. You want to choose themes that relate to the entire text so you can find the best proof. So as I mentioned, there is a difference between a topic and a theme. Topics are what I just listed for you, those universal human experiences. So topics are single word and open-ended like love, war, and deception. But the themes of a story are going to actually state a clear message about that topic. For instance, not love, but love conquers all obstacles. Okay, this is the lesson that we're learning from the text. Not war, but war changes people. Not deception, but deception impacts both victims and perpetrators. Notice that the topic is actually starting each of these statements, and that's a really great way to word your theme statements. Think of your main topic first. This story is about love, and then start with it and give what lesson we're supposed to learn. Now the target this year adds a new feature. In previous years, you've been expected to identify themes and give supporting details. This year, you need to give multiple themes and talk about how they connect. So some reasoning that might help you with that when you're asked about, well, how do they relate to one another? Do consider that multiple themes can reveal complexity in the human experience. So think what complexities are being revealed here, how are multiple types of experiences or multiple responses to the same problem being shown through these different themes. They can also connect to more readers. So you can also check and see, well, does this theme perhaps connect to women, or does this theme connect to men, or does this theme connect to a younger audience, whereas this one connects to an older audience? Consider how they relate in that aspect as well. Now, of course, once you've found your themes, you'll need to make sure that you give supporting details. When you're doing that, make sure that you're being specific. You could even give individual quotes. Don't just summarize what's going on in the text. So quotes would be a good way to go. They should come from various places in the entire text. Please don't just pull quotes from the beginning of the text. One, that kind of tells me maybe you didn't read the whole thing, and that's never a good thing. But two, it misses out on a lot of the story, and a lot of your best quotes are going to come from the end, okay? So best details often come from the end of a text, where the main character is finally learning their lesson. So not always, but best details often come from end of text. So make sure you're reading the whole thing. And then we're talking about your key details to bump up to that 4 level, if you want to be advanced. Look in particular for plot-changing moments. The pieces of the story that really changed the trajectory for the main character, that made them choose to go a different way and perhaps set them up for learning their big, important final lesson. Okay, we're going to take a look at an example here. I have to admit, I'm cheating a little bit. This is a British author, Wilfred Owen. He wrote this poem during World War I. He was a soldier and actually died in combat just before the war ended. So he didn't have a lot of poems published, at least not while he was alive. A collection came out afterward. But he wrote about war and the effects of war on the human experience. So we'll take a look at his example right now and look for multiple themes. I'm going to zoom in here, so bear with me while I do that. That will be easier to read. Okay. And a little bit of background here too. The title is important to this piece. So it's a Latin phrase, dulce et decorum est, and then it goes on at the very end. We'll see pro patria more. Basically the meaning here, it is sweet and right to die for your country. So I want to keep that in mind. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas, gas, quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria more. I see a couple different themes going on here. I'm actually going to take a look at different parts of this poem to identify them. When we read through that first part, it's the action sequence of the men, to me, turning away from the front, going back to get their rest. A lot of negative imagery here. They're like old beggars, knock-kneed, they're coughing, cursing through the sludge. They turned their backs toward their distant rest. They're trudging. They're asleep. They've lost their boots, but they limped on. They didn't even care. They were lame. They were blind. They're drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the guns. The 5-9s be the guns that drop behind. And I look at this whole section, and I feel like the message that's coming through with all of those words is really that soldiers become blind to the pain of war. I mean, they're not paying attention to the guns. They're not paying attention to their bloody feet or to their exhaustion. They're just going on as they're told to do. So soldiers become numb. Could be a good theme here. And even in this second part, I mean, we see some further proof of that. And the gas comes, and of course they're fumbling for their helmets. But he notes that someone was still yelling out and stumbling, floundering like a man in fire lime. And he sees him just through the green light of the gas. He saw him drowning. There's not a lot of reaction here, though. He's just describing what he saw. So I think we can see some further proof for that, as we're verifying, is that in fact a theme. So they become numb during the war. But the second part of the text, I think, brings to light another theme. And I'm going to add on this qualifier here. He goes on, in all my dreams. So after the event, before his helpless sight, he sees this man, this plunging, the guttering, the choking. He sees the horror of it. And that seems to have an impact on him. Not in the moment, but afterward. So war impacts life after, or life beyond fighting, because we know this particular author died. So that could be another theme that we pull. He sees, and if in some smothering dreams you too. Now we change how he's describing here. The first section of this poem is all about what he sees, but now suddenly, if you could dream this, if you could hear it. So now he starts to pull in on another person, still describing the horror of what he saw, which builds on war impacts life beyond fighting. All of these negative details, the froth-corrupted lungs, the writhing in his face, all of those build into here. I changed colors here, but that you too, I think, builds into another theme here, and it really ties into the end piece, the old lie. My friend, you would not tell this lie, that it is right and sweet to die for your country. So I think, the lesson he's saying is don't do this, don't tell people that. If you could see what I've seen, you wouldn't. I think that final lesson is, then, that people should not push war. Because it's horrific. So don't push war on those young people who want some desperate glory. There's no glory here. There's no glory in dying with this pain of this man who has gotten the gas. So people should not push war. War impacts life beyond fighting. Soldiers become numb during war. Any of these would be valid themes. Of course, we need at least two to talk about. And when we look at how they connect, we might consider the impact that war has, both during that soldiers become numb to the pain and to the terrible things that they see, but it will impact them later on. So there's a time effect there, or a time connection there. You may be numb during, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, be a connection there. And then when we connect that into people should not push war, because war is so damaging, both during war and after, because truly, I think to be numb to that kind of pain is not a good thing. Those who are not fighting should certainly not be pushing war. That would also be a valid cause and effect connection. Because it's so terrible, don't push it. So 2 connections for you, 3 different themes. As far as the key details go, looking at all these really strong negative words would be critical, but I think the main turning point in this particular poem is when we merge from what's actually happening into the dream part. In his dreams, and then if you could dream. Those are those key moments in this poem that help make the themes most clear.